Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monday Night Live. Today, I've got an old friend of mine, Godfrey Lancashire, with me. Godfrey and I have known each other for more years than we care to remember or share with you. But we both worked in banking at one stage in our careers, and then Godfrey went off to be a private investigator with all sorts of fantastic stories. He was captain of the United Bank's hockey team, and he took a team to San Francisco, to Gibraltar, to Spain, and to Amsterdam. So a real team player and a great organizer. And Godfrey, thanks for joining us on Monday Night Live. You're going to share some history with us.
Indeed. Thank you, Derek. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And it's lovely to see so many friends on Monday Night Live and so many people from different parts of the world. We've got our American friends, we've got people from South Africa, we've got Winnie from Australia. So lots of people, and it's lovely to see you all. I want to take you back on a bit of time travel, if I may, and I want you to use your imagination that we are now in the first great Elizabethan era. Queen Elizabeth I is on the throne, and she's brought a period of stability. She was our monarch for 45 years after huge unrest. She brought a little bit of calm to proceedings, but it was a fantastic era for the arts, for literature. There was William Shakespeare, but it was also, what I love to say, it was a time of swashbuckling. And there's a challenge to say that word. There was great adventure, piracy, there were great naval battles. We had Walter Raleigh, Sir Francis Drake. It was a huge period of expansion, and people were allowed to do their own thing. And piracy was a noble profession. So it was a wonderful time. It was also a wonderful time for education. Education was booming. Queen Elizabeth I, as you may know, was a tremendous scholar herself and could speak and write Latin, Greek, French, Spanish, Italian, and encouraged a lot of schools to open in her name. She was the founder of Trinity College Dublin, of all places, but she was a great and passionate about education and moving things forward. Into this period comes the hero of our story, Thomas Hardy, a squire, a gentleman to you and me, from a little village called Frampton. And now, Derek, if you could show the first slide of the map.
Coming up, Godfrey.
A map of England.
Yeah.
There we are. So you can see on the south coast of England a blue dot and the village of Frampton, which we will look at in a little more detail in a minute. But just to the west of that, you can see the great naval city of Plymouth, which is significant in our story. So for those of you who aren't familiar with England, we're looking at the south coast. You can see France just opposite, and the English Channel dividing us from the Frenchies. And there is the little village of Frampton. So Derek, can we go to the next one? There we are. And we're zooming in a little bit now. And here we are in the wonderful county of Dorset, my home county. And you can see in the middle, Dorchester, the county town, originally Iron Age, but developed hugely as a Roman town. It was bashed up and conquered by Vespasian in about 40 AD. And he and his Roman troops came in, and it was the Roman Dernaveria, gateway to the west. And it's a walled Roman town with great history. And just 4 miles to the northwest, you can see the village of Frampton, only a couple of hundred people. Sorry, Derek, back to the map. And that's where our hero, Squire Thomas Hardy, lived. To the south of Dorchester, only about 8 miles south, you can see Weymouth, a seaside town with a huge natural, very deep water anchorage. And that is significant and is also true today. So those are the 3 main places we need to keep in our mind on the south coast of England: Frampton, Dorchester, and Weymouth. Okay, Derek, I think the next one, thank you. So into the picture comes Thomas Hardy. And he was a pirate. He made lots of money, a noble profession. And in 1569, he and others started a school, and it was called the Thomas Hardy School, the same as it is today. And that picture you can see with the bell tower is the original school building in the main street of Dorchester, South Street of Dorchester. That's a current photo. It's no longer a school. It's a little arcade of coffee shops and shops. But Thomas Hardy and his mates founded that school in 1569. That is a long time ago, well over 400 years ago. Derek, next picture, please. You can see that this is all part of the original school building. It goes from one main street through to another. There's a little cobbled courtyard in the middle. And Derek, the next. And this is some of the carving on the front of the building as it would have been in the 1600s. And the next, Derek. And there we are, the main street of Dorchester, exactly as it is today. And that is the front of the school as it would have been soon after Thomas Hardy founded the school with money he made from being a pirate. It's recorded in the school history that in the summer of 1588, the boys, then numbering about 40 boys from the town, were given a half-day holiday to go up onto the hills between Dorchester and Weymouth, you remember from the map, to watch the great Spanish Armada as it sailed up past Plymouth and up past Weymouth. And the boys were given a holiday. It was a free school, the forerunner of what we would know today as a grammar school. So Derek, the next one, please. And what they would have witnessed would be this huge fleet of Spanish galleons, very similar to this one. And this one is special. This is the San Salvador. Actually, it's not the San Salvador from 1588, but it's an exact replica made in America. And just as a little aside, there's a separate piece of history that shows that the San Salvador, it's probable and highly likely that this was the ship that went from Spain to settle and found the American city of San Diego. But we're back to the Spanish Armada, and this was a prize ship in the Spanish fleet. And it sailed up with the Armada past Weymouth. Whether the boys actually saw this ship or not, we don't know. And the great naval battle ensued. There was an explosion on the San Salvador, and 49 Spanish sailors were killed. The rest of the crew abandoned ship. And there was this prize ship with a lot of cash and loot still on board. And so the British Navy ordered the Golden Hind, another very famous ship of the time, to go and tie up the San Salvador and tow it into the deep anchorage of Weymouth Harbour, which they did. The British Navy then took whatever they wanted from the ship, and then the locals piled in and they grabbed whatever they could as war booty. And there are several artifacts in Dorchester Museum that came from the ship. There were wine jugs, there were all sorts of different artifacts. But our hero, Thomas Hardy, he and his mates piled on board and took away a great oak screen. And I need to show you where it's likely that this came from. You can see in the middle the great mast, and to the right of it on your picture is the entrance to what is known in naval terms as the after castle. And this great screen, which we'll look at in a minute, went from side to side across the ship, giving entrance into the stern quarters. And we'll come back to that in a minute. So Thomas Hardy took these oak timbers. I think the next one, Derek, please.
Yeah, just coming up.
Next picture coming up. And here it is, this great oak screen. And you can see it in the classroom in that school building that I showed you in South Street in Dorchester. And it was the headmaster of the time in the very early 1600s that rescued this screen and put it in the school building. It measures 6 meters wide and 4 meters high. And it's been in the school in different buildings, which we'll come to, for over 400 years continuously. I just want you to look at that because that is quite some piece of history. It stayed in that same school building that I've shown you for over 300 years until it was moved when the school was expanding and needed more space. Just remember, some of you will remember those sorts of desks that you could see in that classroom. Derek, the next one.
Coming up.
Thank you. So this is the next school building. So the school stayed in that original South Street for over 300 years until 1927, when the school needed more space, playing fields, bigger classrooms. And this is the building which I remember. This was the grammar school that I attended during the 50s and 60s. And also Damien, whom you know, he also was at school in this very same building. The screen was in the library of this building, and we all remember it. And there are lots of carvings of names over the years. Not me, I hasten to add, but there's lots of carved graffiti, But this is where the screen went in 1927. Next one, please, Derek. Any prizes for guessing who this is? This is the poet and author, Thomas Hardy. And he laid the foundation stone of that building I've just shown you in 1927.
It doesn't look like a pirate to me, Godfrey. Is that right?
This is, Derek, keep up, keep up. This is not the pirate. This is now almost 400 years later. Come on.
Okay. Sorry about that.
And it's a very common mistake that when you talk about Hardy's school, people immediately think Thomas Hardy, poet. It isn't. The founder of the school was the pirate, Thomas Hardy, in 1569. We're now in 1927. And this is your author and poet, Thomas Hardy, who laid the foundation stone. Back again, please, Derek. Thank you. And Thomas Hardy was interestingly elected vice president of the Hardians Club. And it's one thing where Damien and I can say a little bit better than Thomas Hardy because we've both been presidents, and he was elected vice president in his day. But it's a wonderful connection to a wonderful guy. And you may know some of the books he's written, Tessa the D'Urbervilles, Far from the Madding Crowd, Jude the Obscure, the Mayor of Casterbridge, and so on. He was an architect when he was in Dorchester, and then went on to be this great poet and author. So the screen has moved from South Street to this latest building, and it stays there for another 65 years until the school is expanding again. Thank you, Derek. Next one. So now we've moved forward to the present day. And from that building that you've just seen, the school has expanded. By now, it has become, in old-fashioned parlance, a comprehensive. In today's parlance, it's an academy, boys and girls from 13 to the age of 18. There are 2,200 students. It has the largest sixth form in the country of over 800 students. And the last Ofsted inspection was outstanding. A wonderful array of facilities, as you can just begin to see in this aerial picture. And the screen was moved from the library of the last building to above the stage of the theatre in this current building. And so far, so good, until tragedy, absolute tragedy. The theatre was being refurbished and the screen had to be taken down. It was taken down in sections and put into store. And somehow, human error, lack of precise instructions, the contractors almost threw it away, and it ended up on a salvage auction site without our knowledge. And at that point, a conservator who was used to looking at these auction sites saw it and came down to see it for himself, realized what it was, got in touch with me actually at the time and said, did you know about this? And we had no knowledge. But since that time, the conservator, Sam Harwood Bowles, whom we'll mention in a minute, and the Hardians Club, Damien, me, and a few others, have worked tirelessly to salvage, restore, and preserve this great oak screen. Next, Derek, please. So the next few slides just show that the screen was in thousands and thousands of small pieces. We can see original nails. The screen was in so many bits, but it was carefully put together piece by piece, like a jigsaw puzzle, really. And the next one, Derek. There we can start to see some of the pieces being laid out, each one carefully labeled, painstaking work. And if we move on, thanks, we can see the bases of some of the big columns that supported. And just to mention, this is a wonderful bit of cooperation in the local area. This is a big commercial space, which is owned by the Duchy of Cornwall. And that, at the time, of course, was Prince Charles as he was. It was his baby to build up Poundbury in this part of Dorchester. And it's been taken over now, of course, by William, who is the Duke of Cornwall. And they've allowed us to use this space free of charge to do all the work and the restoration, because they also appreciate the value and the historic significance of this wonderful oak screen. Just go on to the picture, Derek, you showed with the two chaps. Yeah, so on the right is Sam Harwood Bowles, an expert conservator. He was the one who saw it, and that's his assistant, Lewis. And you can see that at various stages, we've taken photographs, we've taken videos of this great oak screen being put back together. And if you move on, Derek. Yeah, so here it is now. It's complete again. You can see the scale by Sam standing in one of the two doorways. And I'd just like to mention these two doorways. The one on the left and the one on the right, we have it in its entirety. It's actually in school on display in reception. So there we'll retain a link between school and wherever this screen ends up. But this, I'm told by naval authorities, this is very typical of all warships, even to the present day, that leading to the after castle and the crew's quarters, there were always two doors. One was for the captain or admiral, and one was for other officers. And that's been true ever since the 1500s, right the way through to the present day. What is also interesting now that we've got it like this and we can walk around the back, even when it was in school, we could never see the back of it. But it's fantastic. We've got, for example, on the back of one of the panels, a copy of the London Times detailing the French Revolution in 1789. We've got all sorts of graffiti, carving of names. Research continues into all of that. But what I say we've done, Sam here, the conservator, what he has done, he sent the original nails back to the experts who worked on the Mary Rose, and they have confirmed that they are of the period. We've had the timber tested for salt water. Again, we know that this was from a ship of the period. It's European oak, therefore likely Spanish, definitely not English oak. So we've done a lot of research already, and there's a lot more that will continue. We're so lucky that we've been able to work with Sam and his team to get it to this stage, but of course it's taken a lot of cash. So what do we do next? Well, we've been in discussions with local museums, and I'm pleased to say there's a happy outcome that the trustees of the Weymouth Museum have agreed in principle to take it as a main feature in the entrance to their museum because of the maritime heritage and because of the original San Salvador being towed into Weymouth Harbour. We don't want to get into anything like the Elgin marbles. We're not giving this back to the Spanish. We want to keep it in Dorset as a bit of history. It is of equal significance to the Mary Rose. It is that valuable, and the experts in the London museums have all said the same thing. Wherever possible, this should be kept in Dorset. We wanted it to be kept in the school, but the mechanical engineers have said it's too big, it's too heavy to go on a wall. There's nowhere in school that would take it. So our next best location is a museum where everybody can enjoy it and see it. So we need a little bit more cash to restore some of the color. You can see one of the panels on the left-hand door is a little bit darker. That would be, yes, that's it, Derek. That would be the color that we would hope the whole screen would be returned to. So it's a fantastic project. I've really been privileged to be involved with it and work very closely with Sam on getting it to this stage. And we're now just waiting for the final discussions with Weymouth Museum, who are also waiting for the outcome of a national lottery grant so that they've got a little bit of money to help us move it into position. So watch this space, more anon. And there she is, the San Salvador, this wonderful ship that we captured. Hooray, hooray. Derek, that's about it, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Godfrey, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for doing that, taking the trouble to put it all together and share the history with us. A couple of questions from me, because we're nearly out of time, and then we'll take questions afterwards.
Okay.
How come it got, how come the school discarded it, and how come this Sam Bowles picked it up? That was a bit embarrassing, wasn't it?
Very embarrassing for the school, not for the Hardians Club. We're the good guys. We're the ones who have rescued it and saved it and are preserving it. Very embarrassing for school, but it was human error. It was unwitting. No money changed hands, but it was in store under a tarpaulin, and nobody had given a clear instruction. And I guess that's a big lesson to learn. And so the contractors just thought this is a bit of old timber, and they took it to a salvage yard. And luckily, the owner of the salvage yard put it on a specialist auction site, thinking he'd make a bob or two, which he did. And Sam Harwood Bowles is used to looking on this site for interesting artifacts that he might restore and resurrect. And luckily for us, it was Sam who saw it and realized that he needed to speak to the Hardians Club.
That was quite a bit of luck there, wasn't it?
Huge luck.
Now, from a business point of view, what big lessons can anyone watching this on YouTube, or we're all business people, what can we take away from this experience?
Well, there are a couple of obvious ones, and the first, I was amazed to discover that it was not on the school asset register. They had thought of putting down computers and gym equipment and desks and chairs, but this was just always there. And it's so obvious it was overlooked. So it wasn't on the asset register. If it had been on the asset register, I think they would have asked a few more questions at the time. And the other thing, of course, was insurance. It wasn't insured. And so those are the two big questions that I think with hindsight, we should have been aware of. Well, not we, but the school. The Hardians Club are distancing themselves a little bit from the school, but we're doing everything we can to return it to its former glory.
I guess the school's rushing around you know, educating 13 to 18-year-olds really, rather than worrying about a great oak panel.
Yes, I'm sure that's right. And it was taken down in good faith for the refurbishment of the theatre, which was a huge success. But nobody had given any thought as to what should happen next.
Now, you're very kind about the Spanish warship, but it was actually coming to go up the Thames and blow up the Houses of Parliament and take us over, and we could all be speaking Spanish. So I think you might be being a bit too kind there.
Yes, that's quite true. We don't actually know. There was this great explosion in the magazine on the ship, and we're not absolutely certain if it was the result of a British cannonball or whether it was a spark that set off the explosion themselves. But everybody abandoned ship, and the Golden Hind took it into Weymouth.
Mm. And there were a lot of pirates along that part of the Dorset coast, weren't they? And they were up to no good, flashing lights, trying to get people onto rocks, etc. as well.
Well, piracy in those days was quite accepted as a way of making a bit of money. It changed with customs and excise in later years, but at that time, Elizabethan England, piracy, if you went and took a French or a Spanish ship, was considered fair play.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, Godfrey, thank you so much for taking the trouble of doing this for us. That was a fantastic presentation. So can I ask members of Monday Night Live to give you the vote of thanks and a clap in the normal way. Will you stay on to answer some more questions, please?
Of course, a great pleasure, and thank you very much indeed.
And if anybody wants to get in touch with Godfrey, you'll find him on LinkedIn or through me, or any more details of this very historic occasion, this piece of artifact. Do get in touch with us. So thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks again, Godfrey.
Thank you, Derek.